Dan Nelson, great to have you, our Live Your True Life historian. How are you doing today?
Doing great, Ashley. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. Glad you're well and doing well. And I'm looking forward to learning more about what you were sharing in our last show. It was very interesting. Continental Congress. We had Lincoln. We had a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, hopefully today we can, for a moment, take everyone's mind off current headlines and share some mystery and some history. But the last segment, we discussed this mysterious silver teapot that, legend had told us that it resided with the Continental Congress in Independence Hall. We sort of checked that out. And I promise you it'll eventually tie into the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. And, of course, the teapot now resides in Enid, Oklahoma. So less glorious in terms of where it sits now. Not creating a whole lot of news stories, but want to investigate these stories that we'd heard. So we, of course, talked about last time that the teapot made it into as a family heirloom in the Smither family of mine in Oxford, Mississippi. And we talked about the way that it came by way of the Thompson family. And I'm sort of like, who are these Thompsons? How did they fit into the picture? Because as far as I know, there wasn't, any Thompson family on that side of my family tree. So first thing I did was, since it came from the Continental Congress, is I thought, well, I'll check all the records of the Continental Congress. And I found no Thompsons involved with the Continental Congress or the Declaration of Independence, which is sort of surprising because Thompson's a pretty common name. Most of us probably know people with the last name Thompson. Then I thought, well, maybe I missed something. So I called the curators at the Continental Independence Hall, and they also assured me there were no Thompsons involved. So then I thought, okay, well, I'll go back and make sure in our family tree there's no Thompsons. But I could not find any Thompson surnames in that side of the tree. So then the next thing I did was, I'm starting to think, okay, this may be lost to time, this story, if I can't find these Thompsons. But I did another review, and I did find one Thompson name in there, and it was actually a Kate Thompson Smither, who was the sister of my great-great-grandfather and the sister of Virginia Smither's father. And just to refresh, Virginia Smither is the person that inherited the teapot and passed it down in her family. So I thought, well, I need to find out how Kate Smither got this middle name of Thompson, since it's not a family name. So I was able to track down her great-great-granddaughter, Gloria Gonzalez. And I asked Gloria, I said, Gloria, do you know how this Thompson name ended up as Kate's middle name, as your great-grandma's middle name? And she said that she knew exactly where she got the middle name, as the story had been passed down to her years before. And she said that Kate Thompson Smither always went by the name Kate Thompson. So if you saw her walking down the street, you didn't say, hey, Kate. You said, hey, Kate Thompson. And she said that when she was born in Oxford, Mississippi, she was named after 28-year-old Kate Thompson. And Kate Thompson was the wife of the notable Jacob Thompson. And at the time that Kate Thompson Smither was born, Jacob was the Democratic congressman in the U.S. House of Representatives from Oxford, Mississippi. So he's a notable person. But still, lots of us are born and not named after our congressman's wife. So there has to be more to this story. And we'll touch on it more later, and particularly in another segment about Kate Thompson. And she was definitely, we're talking about empowerment today. You'll see as the story unwinds that she was definitely, for the time, that time in history, an empowered young lady, and took some steps to ensure the safety of her family. But we'll talk more about that. So anyways, this Jacob Thompson, he was a prominent and wealthy cotton planter, and he started with a pretty good stake in life because his father expanded his mother's vast fortune from the Van Hook family of Pennsylvania. And as of 1860, Jacob Thompson was worth $900,000. And that would be equal to $28 million today. So by far the richest person I've came across. They actually used to record the value of your property and then the value of your property and other holdings in the early censuses. So that's how we know this. So Jacob moved from North Carolina to Mississippi, and at age 28, he married 16-year-old Kate Jones. And Kate was the only daughter of another wealthy person named John Peyton Jones. He was worth $90,000 as of 1850, so only 10% of his son-in-law's future holdings, but still a lot of money for back in the day. That would have been $2.8 million. So that gives you a little more about Kate. Now, let's talk about Jacob. So when Kate Thompson Smither was born, Jacob was actually being considered as a Democratic nominee for the U.S. Senate from Mississippi. But instead, the Democratic Party went for a guy you've likely heard about named Jefferson Davis, who eventually became the President of the Confederate States of America. So Jacob served in Congress with another guy you may have heard of named Abraham Lincoln. And allegedly, they'd formed a true and lasting friendship. They'd crossed the aisle, a Democrat and a Republican, a Northerner and a Southerner, a pro-slavery and an anti-slavery. And said that they each admired and respected the manly qualities of the other. And Thompson recognized in Lincoln a real friend and not an enemy of the Southern way of life. So in the 1856 election, so we're now out about 7 years from the Civil War, actually about 6, Thompson supported James Buchanan as the Democratic nominee. And when Buchanan got elected, he rewarded Jacob by making him the Secretary of the Interior. So off they went to Washington again, and it was a big deal to get invited to the Jacob Thompson home because Kate was considered a lovely woman possessing fine taste and judgment, and they really made their mark on the Washington social scene because
that's
Buchanan,
awesome. We're going to have to wrap up, Dan. I can't wait to hear more about this story next week.